Good morning, world. I'm Steve Rao, the host of Pod and Roku TV's World Edition. I greet you live from the All America city of Morrisville in North Carolina, the eighth largest state in the United States of America. And wherever you are in the world of the country today, we welcome you to this show where we talk about global affairs, an increasingly turbulent world, politically, economically, innovation, and new exciting things going on in the world. Today, I couldn't think of a better guest to bring on than my colleague, former colleague, and former mayor of the town of Morrisville, Mark Stolman, talk about cricket. Cricket is a very, very well-known sport around the world. The first game actually in the United States was in 1844 when the United States played Canada. Since that time, immigrants have been bringing this great sport to all around to the United States of America. And Major League Cricket actually has been the beneficiary of much of this global talent. They're actually playing the Major League Cricket Championships in Texas this week. And yes, we'll be coming to North Carolina in Morrisville at our Church Street Park to be playing 9 or a couple rounds of matches to celebrate this global sport. Today, we welcome Mark Stolman to the show to talk about the cricket transformation of Morrisville, North Carolina, and what this means in terms of the Economist article about immigrants bringing this wonderful sport and redefining cricket in America, at least now. So, Mark, welcome to the show.
Welcome, Steve. Thank you for having me on the show.
Sorry for the technical difficulties, and I'm not greeting you from the White House, although I had to. I couldn't upload the Church Street background this morning. I was trying to. So you'll have to do with the Oval with the White House. But Mark, if you could, for our audience, explain a little bit about the Major League Cricket Championships, and then maybe backtrack in terms of how this came to be. You and I were serving together when we opened up the Church Street Park in Morrisville. So go ahead and just let us know what's going on.
Sure. Let me bring you up to speed on what's happening this week in Morrisville. We are hosting 7 matches, T20 matches of the Major League Cricket group up here in Church Street Park in Morrisville, North Carolina. They started the tournament last week in Dallas, Texas, and then they'll return to Dallas, Texas after their stint in Morrisville to complete the playoffs and actual championship at the end of July. But we're very excited to host the 6 teams from around the country, and they're represented from the great state of California has San Francisco Unicorns, the LA Knight Riders. Seattle are the Seattle Orcas. Up in New York is MI New York. And of course, we have the Washington Freedom and the Texas Super Kings. Some of those names are familiar because there's a lot of backing from the IPL with these teams. And a lot of the IPL players are going to be here in Morrisville this week to show the local folks what global cricket talent looks like. We're super excited about hosting this tournament and can't wait to see everyone out there. Just got word this morning that the matches are sold out, but there may be some limited tickets available closer to match time. So if you are local, if you are in North Carolina, keep trying to get tickets, and we'd love to see you at Church Street Park. As Steve said, the journey to get here has been it's been a long journey, probably the last 10 years or so, when the town decided to town of Morrisville was very proactive at hosting regional and recreational cricket tournaments, and they grew it to developing Church Street Park, which is a world-class turf wicket that's hosted ICC World Cup qualifiers. It's hosted for the last 2 years the minor league finals, and then this year we're proud to host the Major League Cricket tournament for 7 matches. So we couldn't be any prouder of what the town of Morrisville has done. Steve Rao has been instrumental in getting getting all these events planned. And so we're looking forward to seeing world-class cricket in Morrisville.
Before we bring on our panel, it's very informal, kind of just almost like a modern version of The View on the podcast. We've got some folks who are just going to ask some basic questions. How big a deal is this in terms of, we've got, people from Australia, India, Europe. We have one Ukrainian on the show. He lives in Canada. So they're all knowledgeable about cricket, but this is a big deal, the difference between major and minor league, right? So these are top athletes from around the world that are coming to play in these championships.
Right. And this is the inaugural season for the major league. The minor league in cricket has been around for 3 seasons now. And a lot of those players have advanced to the major league, but we have tapped into the, folks from South Africa, New Zealand, Pakistan, Australia, England. They're all players on these teams. So no matter where you're from, you're likely to know a professional player that's going to be here in Morrisville. I was at Church Street the other day just looking at the preparations of the tournament, and I ran into a gentleman from South Africa who lives in North Carolina, but he was actually having friends from around the country fly into Morrisville, North Carolina to attend these matches because it's so rare to see such a popular sport in North Carolina that we're going to have a great crowd there, but it's worldwide influence and worldwide exposure. So we're real happy for that.
Fantastic. We're going to go ahead and bring on our Jacoby, if you could go ahead and bring on a panel. We're going to keep Mark for about 10 minutes. He's got to run. He and I we're going to be doing some stuff this afternoon. I want to welcome you to our show, Mark. And we got Jacoby McDuffie. We also have Mark Lee. Here he is, the co-producer. Yeah. Mark, thank you for being with us today. And we have with us former mayor of Morrisville, Mark Stolman, who's been a real advocate for cricket now as a former mayor. And so I'm just going to keep it informal. So, Mark, I guess I'll kick it off to you. Mark lives in Durham, home of the Durham Bulls. So, Mark, we've got Mark Lee. We've got professional cricket coming. So, didn't know if you had any questions for Mark Stolman for the 10 minutes we hear.
Just from an economic standpoint, what will it do in terms of the cricket coming to Morrisville and everything? I know that here in Durham, when the Bulls have definitely been a major economic engine, so I'm imagining that it will be an economic engine for Morrisville as well. Just like I know that sometimes there are specialty events that come on also, and I was wondering about that as well, because I do know that Jacoby and the Bulls just had one of those specialty events that were this past weekend where there was a Harlem Globetrotter baseball team that was in town. So I didn't know if there would be any specialty events that would be going on with the cricket match to draw people in and families in as well. So if you could talk about the economic engine and maybe if there are any kind of specialty events that'll go on there as part of the game.
Sure. On the economic side, we have teamed up with Wake County. They were one of the early partners in Church Street Park with the town of Morrisville and hotel meal tax grants that we've gotten from the county. We were able to do a lot of upgrades at Church Street Park, which really put it over the top, which made it international cricket compliant in a lot of ways. So they are a huge partner. We are when it comes to all the teams and all the fans that come to this area, well, we ask them very politely to stay at a Wake County hotel, first of all, and I'm sure there'll be plenty in Durham as well. But the economic impact, we see that actually the Greater Raleigh Sports Alliance does a good job at monitoring that, and we actually monitor that for Wake County. It's shown that the investments that the different municipalities in Wake County have made in Morrisville's Church Street Park are paying off. They're seeing the return. They're seeing the, as they say, heads in beds and people eating at the local restaurants and stuff. So we definitely see the economic impact, but it's got a huge impact on our local community. We have probably about 35% South Asian in Morrisville, and for them to be able to see a sport that is so familiar to them on a regular basis is huge. So we have a huge local following. I think when you see these matches, if you really go to Willow TV, they're being broadcast there, but you'll see the crowds there. Literally up to 4,000 fans will be at Church Street Park. As far as specialty events, We think cricket itself is enough specialty event. It's going to be it's a new event for a lot of people. I spend a lot of my time at these matches sitting down with people that just showed up because of curiosity. Right. There are some unusual rules. It's somewhat like baseball, but I think a heck of a lot more exciting, a lot more action. And I think once we get the fans in there and explain the rules to them, they get hooked. So that's our goal. If you want to invite the Globetrotters to come by, we'll make sure we get some tickets for them, and maybe we can do a little Globetrotting cricket activity in between sort of halftime.
Hey, who knows? Maybe we could do that. One of the things I was curious about, and then I know Jacoby's probably got some questions as well. What is it about, and I kind of alluded to it, but what's about North Carolina that is drawing so much international attention? Because I know that there is international tennis that is here, and definitely I know that Steve is aware of that. We have a major league soccer franchise that is bringing in world events, and there is even a skate park, I believe is over there in Holly Springs, that is drawing in international folks as well. So I just wondered, what is it about North Carolina, particularly this core central part of North Carolina, that is drawing so much international global sports interest?
Well, I think it started out with we had a lot of immigrants that moved here for education and work experiences, but that's grown into whole communities that are, I would say North Carolina is an incredibly welcoming place. We're the land of opportunity within the United States as far as work opportunities. We certainly have some world-class educational institutions here in the Triangle with Duke, UNC, and NC State and Wake Forest down the road. So I think all those things kind of are the initial draw. But what keeps people here are things like these international soccer tournaments that, the soccer tournament that went on a few weeks ago. Then Wrexham is going to be in this week playing at UNC. And then you have the Major League Cricket with all the international players. It's nonstop, diversity in sports here in North Carolina. Not to mention the weather is usually really nice. Our taxes are low. You got the beach 2 hours away, the mountains 2 hours away. There's not a lot not to love about North Carolina. So I'd say that even if I wasn't an old mayor.
Before I go to Jacoby, I think the other part is, like Mark and I are going to the airport today to welcome one of the teams. The RDU airport is a very international airport. I mean, we've got direct flights to France, England, to many places, and very affordable, even though you have Charlotte Douglas. But I think it's easy, for those players to come in, get a hotel in Morrisville, pop on over to the park to practice. It's just easy to get in and out. And Michael Landgood's done a really good job with the airport, Mark. I know you and I have kind of witnessed that over the last decade. But RDU Airport, it's a little bit smaller than your Hartsfield or your Reagan Nationals, obviously, in Chicago, but they get the job done. Bringing people in, quick service, you get your TSA pre-check, and I go to DC twice a month now, and it takes me 5 minutes to go to the airport or 10 minutes, go in there, get on the plane, and I'm there in an hour. Right, so great stuff.
Yeah, just really quickly, and I definitely want to turn it over to Jacoby as well, but you mentioned it earlier about the college aspect and things along that line, and there is definitely a growing Asian population in a lot of our universities, including some of the HBCUs that are here as well, because you definitely mentioned several of the colleges, but we also have North Carolina Central, Shaw, and St. Aug that have a decent minority population as well, and some of those have cricket are from cricket countries, both in Africa as well as Asia and a number of other places. Are you aware, or do you know of any colleges that are starting or are planning on starting cricket programs? Because that's one of the things that you were mentioning, colleges. I was trying to think if I knew of any colleges that were doing that or were thinking of doing that at any point, and I couldn't think of any, but it seems like a lucrative possibility for some of our colleges.
Yeah, that's a great question, because you figure where are these players coming from? And usually in most sports, they kind of come out of the college ranks. Cricket is a little more difficult as far as that's concerned. There is some club cricket being played at the local universities. I'm part of the Triangle Cricket League, which is a recreational league that's been around about 15 years. We have over 250 teams with some 2,500 players here locally. And a lot of those folks are coming from, the historical Black universities, the local universities, and just from the workforce around here. So there is a way to at least play a lot of cricket here if you're of college age. It's a little bit tougher to crack into these pro ranks, but that's why the minor league has been established. That's 26 minor league teams around the country. So if you're a decent player, you've got some talent, there's a way to get into eventually the major league and maybe some of the larger international groups. But it's I wish it was more of a traditional college sport, but there's just so much money that goes around within the college world, and it's difficult to carve off what is needed for the cricket sport.
Yeah, that makes sense. I turn it over to Jatovi and, of course, the boss of the network, Nick Palveda, and also Shaquille from Down Under, if they've got any questions. But that was just some of the immediate things that popped into my head.
Thank you, sir.
I mean, the first one that pops in my head kind of ties into actually everything that you guys were talking about, but mine is always on that community youth level. Mm-hmm. What ways, for example, can the youth get into like cricket and begin to learn? Because as you know, in North Carolina, I mean, we're heavily dominated with baseball, with basketball and football.
Yeah.
And we're finally opening the door up to, pickleball, of course. But, so how does cricket crack into the youth?
Well, I tell you, they actually, the Triangle Cricket League is, I don't want to keep being an ad for them, but they are an established organization that thrives on youth participation. We have many, what they call U19, U15, U13 teams. Pretty much youth of any age over the age of probably 7 or 8 could start within the Triangle Cricket League and advance. And we have actually seen some of our players, now that it's been around a little while, advance to sort of the U.S. U19, US U17, US 23 teams are from the Triangle Cricket League here in Wake County. So there's a much easier path for youth in cricket, and we'd love to have any kids that come out. It's an interesting sport if they've done any sort of tennis, anything with a bat on the ball, tennis, baseball, softball, pickleball. If there's any and you can run 22 yards, you can play cricket.
On an interesting note, I guess for anybody who's like a bottom line person that is curious about it, and you know that there are those average costs and so on and so forth tied to not only gymnastics, which thank the Lord, my daughter is no longer in gymnastics because that gets expensive. But in terms of cricket, what are the costs that come associated with it? If, for example, I'm a parent that says, hey, I want to get my child into cricket. These are the things that I've got to be prepared for.
It's actually pretty nominal. It's, a bat, some pads, a helmet, and a lot of these teams will provide that for kids that are starting. So the entry into cricket is, I would say, very, very minimal. What gets most parents are these travel teams where you have to go travel across the state or across the country to do tournaments. And the nice thing we have here in Morrisville is we have about 12 grounds locally that you can play cricket on. So we're actually the ones that are hosting a lot of these youth cricket tournaments, both for kids, co-ed teams, and also women's groups and so that's really your savings with cricket, is that if you join kind of the local league, you can play locally in a lot of these tournaments. So you don't have those hotel and travel costs that you do with a lot of other sports. But just the entry to get in, it's pretty inexpensive. And I encourage folks to look up the Triangle Cricket League locally if there's some interest there. But we'd love to have additional players. And it's a large, well-run organization.
Hey, Mark, along those same lines, just really quickly, as I'm thinking about it, if you've got somebody that is a kid, and I definitely have a kid in my life, actually 2 of them, my 2 nephews that have been very active in both soccer and the football, what kind of message could you give them that might convince them to either add cricket to their list of sports that they want to play, or maybe replace one of the sports that they are involved in? And the other thing is that I know that my brother, their dad, is very active in coaching into some degree. So are there any opportunities for parents to be involved on the coaching aspect with this minor league cricket? Because I know that that is part of the appeal that he has enjoyed, and some of the other parents that I know have enjoyed as well. So I was just wondering if there are any parenting opportunities in terms of coaching, and also what argument you might give to a younger 13 and 14-year-old, about to be 14 and 15 next month, to join this sport.
Well, I would say on the parenting side, yes, we encourage, because it's volunteer work that's being done here to run these things. So there's always need for additional coaches, even if you aren't familiar with the sport. I encourage you to come out, be a part of it, and it's something that you can pick up pretty quickly. But there's definitely a need for parental support for the local cricket scene. As far as someone sort of deciding between different sports. As someone that grew up, I grew up in the Washington, D.C. area, primarily playing softball and baseball. And I can tell you now that I play cricket, there's no comparison as far as excitement, activity. Every ball, every delivery matters. The kids are very active throughout the entire match. And the matches typically can last, 2 to 3 hours, depending on the format. But there's kind of nonstop activity. It rewards people with good eye-hand coordination that can bat. It rewards folks that can sprint like crazy for 22 yards. It's got a fielding aspect. Now in cricket, we don't use gloves, so to me, it's the challenge is a lot. It's a pure sport. We don't have a lot of when you're up in cricket, you get one chance, and you can bat for as long as you can until you're out. And when you're out, you go sit on the bench for the rest of the game until it's time for you to field. So it's, I would say it's for youth kind of deciding between sports, try something different. You're going to regret later on in life that maybe you just took the safe way out and, join your buddies, the local team or something, but do something that maybe is a little bit outside your comfort zone. And I think what you'll find out is later on in life, there won't be one person from a cricket playing country that you can't talk to and get a conversation instantly, an instant connection with someone, because cricket is kind of the worldwide language, second largest sport behind soccer. And a lot of 14-year-olds don't think about the future, but as far as business relations, community relations and connections in your network, there's a strong cricket network out there. Anyone I talk to from, down under or South Africa or England, and I tell them I play cricket, instant connection. You got the sale. So.
Hey, Shaquille, I will toss it over to you and everything, but are there a lot of business deals done on a cricket floor? Because I usually think of golf and definitely tennis to some degree being a business kind of notion, but I know you're in the business lane, so I was wondering if there are a lot of business deals that are done on the cricket field and everything. If you've done some on the cricket field, Shaquille, because I usually think of golf as being that business sport.
Yeah, fun. Well, you have 10 other teammates, and you're always talking about it, and so there's instant, in my case, brotherhood. When you're on a cricket team. So absolutely.
Hey, last question before we let Mark go. Well, we had Shaquille Latimer. Shaquille's from Australia. Shaquille, do you have any insight for Mark Stolman?
So clearly I'm of Indian heritage, and I'm British and Australian. I think the business deals are great over a cricket field, but I'm looking forward to you Americans trying to compete with us on our sports. I want to see more of it, Mark. I want to see much more of it.
And we have
well, I appreciate that, and I'll take you up for the challenge.
Shaquille is our more conservative voice on the show. Just kidding. No, but he's a very successful businessman. And believe it or not, Mark's an independent now. But when he was mayor, he was a moderate Republican. I was a Democratic mayor pro tem, and in those 4 years, we got more done for Morrisville than they did in the last 20. A Republican and Democrat. So I just wanted to throw that out there for humor, as we always debate the political wars on the show sometimes. But hey, quickly before we
no politics.
I can't just let that slide. Mark, when they say that I'm a conservative, what they mean by that is because I'm not American, I don't take a position on Democrats and Republicans. So therefore, because I'm not a Democrat, it must mean I'm a conservative. That's what they mean when they describe me as a conservative.
Hey, real quickly, Mark, could you explain before you leave the difference? What does T20 mean? We forgot to ask that question. So maybe you already mentioned it. What does T20 mean? These are all T20 matches.
Sure. T20 means that they're 20 overs, which is sort of the equivalent of an inning in baseball, but it means each over has 6 good deliveries. What it really means is it lasts about 3 hours as opposed to test cricket, which could be multiple days, or ODIs, or sometimes 40s or 50s. But so this is kind of a modern version of cricket to keep us Americans that have a very short attention span, glued to the screen. And it actually didn't start in America, but it helps us that it's only a 3-hour match. Otherwise, you'd start losing a lot of people, I think, in the U.S. after a couple hours.
Actually, I did have an interesting question.
Sure.
And I guess it's a twofold thing to tie in the whole, having the experience makes it easier for you to communicate on a worldwide level since everybody has that tie. Mm-hmm. What about accessibility? I know in baseball we have the Miracle League. In soccer, there's that reach out in the special needs community that's there as well. In the cricket world, is there any like the accessibility challenges, or are there leagues that are similar to a Miracle League in that fashion? And could that be something in the future that could take place? Especially in this area, because the Miracle League is huge in North Carolina. So accessibility, how does that work in cricket? Well,
I will just say that we're accessible to anyone that wants to come out and give it a try. There's people, they're not tryouts. People aren't turned down. But someone maybe with limited mobility, we would certainly look to make their experience as rich as possible. There's no formal Miracle Leagues like there are for baseball or softball, but that's not to say it can't happen one day. All things have to start somewhere, and these conversations like this are what kind of open the door. But I like the idea. I always feel like cricket is open to anyone and everyone. I'm probably one of the oldest guys in our league, and it doesn't matter because I can hit the ball and run 22 yards. So there's the barriers are more up here than physical. So we want enthusiasm. We want people that are excited about being there, and we'll make it a good experience for whoever shows up.
So Mark, how does the game go with attracting fans and players in the United States? Obviously, British countries and Commonwealth countries, it's a sport that we all play. One of my frustrations with cricket when I was a much younger person was the game lasts 16 years. You know what I mean? So we're used to, with our other sports in Australia, rugby or AFL or those sorts of sports, it's a couple of hours and it's over. I know that you have some games that people in Australia will watch, like the NFL. We'll watch that, and sometimes we're like, what is going on? Why is this taking so long? They don't have to run that far. How does that go with, look, you talked about the 2020 matches, and you talked about sort of, day-long matches, but how does that go for those longer games where you start when you're 15 years old and you get on Social Security and retire by the time the game finishes? How do you go with attracting Americans to that sort of a sport?
Yeah, I think it's trying to promote the T20 aspect. There's actually T10, which I'm not a big fan of. I think that's getting a little silly. T10 meaning it's 10 overs, so that's over with before you have your first cup of tea. But the T20 I think is the sweet spot. I think there's about the 3-hour match is enough for most people. As a player, it's in this heat it can be exhausting. I can't imagine playing test matches myself. I've umpired a couple 50-over matches for the youth that come here, and it's exhausting. So I'm glad the T20 is a thing. I think that is going to help hook the Americans a little bit more than maybe these longer formats that we have. And it's all about the Major League started in Texas last week. It's got some really good press. I think it's just we're at the baby steps here. We're at the very beginning of what I think is going to be really big. We're hoping to host the World Cup in 24 in the U.S. The U.S. and West Indies are co-hosts. And so we're looking at a possibility. We might even have a World Cup match at Morrisville if we're lucky. But then in 28, they're talking about LA Olympics having cricket. So I think, we're going to be a little bit older, gentlemen, by the time it's mainstream. But we can say that we were there when it started, especially some gentlemen.
I'll speak on behalf of the Commonwealth here. We'll make you a deal. We'll allow the Americans to win an international cricket match when you guys allow us to win that World Series that you guys have. But let me ask you something to put you on the spot here and ask you a really controversial question. You obviously follow cricket. You've obviously loved cricket. I'm not sure why. You'll have to tell us what got you into cricket as an American. But you're obviously aware of the Australian-New Zealand underarm bowling incident. So here's the question for the Australian-New Zealand audience. Who was right, the Australians or the New Zealanders?
Well, I think if you're talking about the match where they needed 6 runs to win on one ball, and they basically bowled it down the length of the pitch instead of giving a proper, what I call a proper delivery. Is that the one you're talking about?
That's what I'm talking about. Whose side? It was 6 runs. Whose side are you taking, the Australians or the New Zealanders?
I think it was, it was by the rules at the time. The rules have changed, obviously. I think it was a little bit of a cop-out, though. I would have liked to seen a delivery, and let's just see what happens. The bowlers can do a lot of things. They don't, besides, give him a full toss at his feet. Make it difficult for him to hit a 6, but don't. I thought it was kind of a cop-out that they bowled on the ground, giving them no chance at all to score anything except maybe 1 run. So
I can tell you that I think that every I've never met anybody who disagrees. Every person in Australia would consider that to be one of Australia's most shameful sporting moments. We are very proud of our sporting prowess. Obviously, New Zealand is our sister country. Wasn't a good look, and I think it's something that we're still quite embarrassed about. But Mark, please tell us. So you're an American through and through. What are you doing playing a British sport? You guys had a civil war. You had a war of independence. What's going on here? What was your interest in cricket?
Well, when Steve and I were on the council together, we have a world-class cricketer that lives here in Morriston, Sir Alvin Karacharan from the West Indies. He won a couple World Cups in the 70s and 80s, I think. And but he's a local guy. He's one of the coaches for the youth here at the Triangle Cricket League. And he saw the grounds that we were building. We built a big multi-use field that was sort of looked like a cricket field. Wasn't really a cricket field, but it kind of looked like one. But he had a vision. He brought in people from the ICC to Morrisville in 2015. We went to Church Street Park, and I stood there with the ICC and Sir Alvin Karacharan, and they said, you know what, if you do A, B, and C, you could be hosting some international matches here. And we did it. We brought in a world-class grounds curator, David Agnew from Australia, and he dialed in the pitch. And in 2018, we held a series of international World Cup qualifiers, T20 World Cup qualifiers with Canada, U.S., Belize, and Panama. And that put us on the map because people saw how beautiful Church Street Park was. My background, I got to always do the coin toss or man of the match trophies when I was mayor. And then I asked way too many questions about the rules of cricket. And they finally said, Mark, why don't you play? And I said, can I? They go, yeah, if you can run, 22 yards and bat. I said, I can do that. So I started playing about 6 years ago. I'm hooked on it, totally hooked on cricket. And I'll tell this to people. I'm 64 years old now, and I'm not the worst player on my team.
That's good to know and everything, because I just turned 61 recently. Hey, Mark, really quickly, what are some of the sponsorship opportunities that exist either for the players or for the city? Because I know that a lot of times people are looking at ways that they can sponsor, whether they are a business. And of course, we know that in some sports, the players are even looking at sponsorship opportunities. I just saw that Mr. Alvarez just got a recent deal in tennis with Rolex and Nike and all along those spaces. But what are some of the either personal business best sponsorship deals for the players, and what are some sponsorship opportunities for businesses that exist in the Triangle?
Yeah, well, we're always looking for sponsorship at the local level for the Triangle Cricket League. So there's tons of things if business wanted to sponsor a name on a jersey or give money for the drinks that we have to use during the match or whatever. So there's plenty of local sponsors that we do get actually, and we love it when they sponsor a youth or women's team. That's great. On the more of a professional level, there's a lot of real estate on these cricket jerseys and hats, and we're almost like NASCAR. They take up every square inch on the professional levels with logos and things. At the grounds themselves, there's tons of advertising. So I would say if you know of a business out there that wants to spend some money on cricket, contact the major league. They'll put you in touch with the major league, the minor league, or locally, wherever you're from. You can contact your local leagues for sponsorship opportunities. I haven't seen a lot of cricket celebrities on TV. Maybe that's going to happen one day. But
I can make a few phone calls if you like, Mark.
There you go.
Let me ask you a question, though, because I always find it fascinating. I quite like the ice hockey. Now, for reasons I won't get into, Vancouver is my team.
Okay.
Haven't won for a while, but that's the team that I picked, so that's the team I'm stuck with. But it's very interesting when I'm in Australia and I do meet somebody else that watches the NHL. There's no real passion for whatever NHL team you support, or the AFL or the footy or whatever sports that you have over there. There's no real passion for it. We just pick a team and we sort of go for them. So what happens? Recently there's been an incident between Australia and the UK, Australia and England, where they caught the ball and somebody left the crease and all that sort of stuff. There's been a controversy over it. The Prime Minister talked about it. What happens with you guys in America? Do you have any real passions for it, or do you sort of sit back and watch and say, oh, okay, well, let's just see what happens? Or do you guys sort of get quite passionate about whether somebody was acting unsportsmanlike?
Well, I think as far as cricket, I saw the incident that you're talking about, and I was probably like a lot of people. It was kind of, it was a little bit shocking. Again, it's by the rules. The umpire had not called the over yet, so things were kind of still live. And the batter did step out of the crease. I don't think he was trying to run a run. I don't think he was trying to do anything except just walk a little bit. But rules are rules. It's like Mankad. You got to be careful. You got to have your wits about you when you're a batsman. You got to know when the ball's dead. And until it is, be careful. Stay in back of the crease. But we get real passionate here. On all the other sports that you mentioned, football, hockey. Here at Raleigh, we have the Hurricanes, and they've been very, very successful the last 3 years. And so there'll be a lot of talk on other sports. It hasn't quite crept into cricket yet, except unless you're from a cricket playing country. Then, the matches I play in, there's usually some guy on their phone watching, especially during IPL season or something, watching the matches and always commenting on the international ODIs and things like that. So,
hey, Mark and Shaquille,
I can say, having traveled to the US many times, and I've been to 27 of your states, I can tell you I've never really met anybody in the US other than somebody who's a tourist. I've never really met anybody who's had a conversation with me about cricket. I have had a few conversations about soccer, which is not a sport that I'm into. I have had a few conversations about like tennis or Australian basketball or other sports like that. Rugby is a big sport in England, but I haven't really heard much about cricket from Americans. So I'm glad to see that you guys are getting involved, and hopefully you'll be an addition to cricket internationally.
Hey, Mark and Shaquille, just really quickly, how because that's one of the things that people talk about all the time, and I am not as familiar as I should be one of these times, and I've been telling Steve this for a while, and I'll tell you as well. I'll get over to Morrisville and catch one of these matches at this lovely park and everything. But how avid is the fan base? Because I know that in rugby and in soccer, we oftentimes hear of the fans being almost as active and as involved as the actual players are, and all along those lines. So as one that is not that aware of the game, how avid are the fans and how avid are they as a fan base when there is such a country-oriented sport and everything? Like I said, I don't know the answer to this, but I'd love to hear your thoughts, Mark, if you want to add to it, Shaquille, if you've maybe seen some of the games, or even Steve Rao, because I don't know enough about the sport to know.
Well, look, I'll give you the Australian and British perspective on it. I think for Australians, we have a plethora of sports that we're involved in. So for me personally, I watch the cricket. I like the cricket, but it's not the number one sport that I'd watch. AFL, which is a game that's unique to Australia, is more of the sport that I watch. And then we have rugby, the type of rugby we play has different rules for Australia. So they're probably the two more popular sports here. I know that certainly England has a much stronger base of supporters than I would dare say than Australia does. But certainly India, Pakistan, those sorts of countries, Sri Lanka, have a very, very passionate base. And I think it's great when we have the big international games and things like that. We see those fans fly into various countries and support their teams. So I think that's fantastic. Mark.
Yeah. Well, folks, Mark has to leave. We want to thank him for being with us. And as a point of personal privilege, I want to personally thank him for all the work he's doing in cricket, both as a former mayor, and now as an engaged resident of our town and our state. We look forward. Please go to MajorLeagueCricket.com to get your tickets. And thank you all so much for hosting the show with Mark Storman.
Yeah, there's really only about 5 more minutes to go anyway, and before we go to the economics show, and then after the economic show, the media show, and all in that space. Because I know we'll start, even though we started late.
Well, let's let Mark have the final word, because
that's what I was going to do, is give Mark the final word.
I will once again reiterate, Mark, that Australians and Brits, we sledge each other, we tease each other a lot. But I think it's going to be fantastic to see another country get involved, and I really commend you for what you're doing. I imagine introducing a new sport wouldn't be easy, so I hope that you guys get all the success with it, and all the enjoyment out of it that we have.
Well, we appreciate that. We'd like to think that we started cricket back here in 1844, and it took a little reprieve, but we're going to bring it back, and I think by 2044 it'll be as mainstream as the rest of our sports. So. I appreciate the time this morning, gentlemen. This is exactly how we get the word out about Morrisville's cricket. And if you have a chance, come by Church Street Park for this tournament. It's known throughout the world as a first-class pitch. We've got a beautiful turf wicket. So I encourage everyone to come out. If not, watch it on Willow TV. And whatever your team is, just cheer on cricket. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, folks. Thank you, Mark.
Is it broadcast internationally at all, Mark, that you're aware of?
It is. If you go to Major League Cricket, you can see where it is. It's different broadcasts throughout the world. U.S., it's Willow. Well, I'm not sure where it is in Australia. It is available, though.
It was available online. We should be able to bring it up. So,
all right.
Well, Mark Storman, thank you so much, and appreciate it.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Gentlemen, I'm going to move to my closeout because it's going to be a little longer than usual. So we'll go ahead and mark to that if that's okay.
Yeah, that's no problem.
But Mark, thank you for being with us.
All right. Thank you, Johnny.
So as I close out the show today, we did not talk about some things around the world we were going to talk about. We'll talk about that tomorrow. The Russian grain deal, Ukraine will have a hard time now selling grain, the Crimean bridge attack. And I wanted to really talk about two things today. There'll be other things to talk about: China's economy, a little bit about Fareed Zakaria's special on immigration and some of the challenges of legal immigration reform versus what's happening at the border and how this affects politics in the U.S. and around the world. But two things that I want to end with. First of all, this evening, No Labels is hosting their first presidential town hall in New Hampshire, where United States Senator Joe Manchin will be joined at the town hall with former Republican governor, ambassador to China and ambassador to Trump, ambassador to China and ambassador to Russia under Trump, and he was ambassador to China under Obama, John Huntsman. And there's been rumors that this could be the No Labels presidential ticket, but we're going to be watching Joe Manchin and them talk about bringing people together for a more moderate position, claiming that the Democrats have gone too far to the left, Republicans are fringing too far to the right, and maybe no labels is a solution. We've heard David Walker talk about this, so this is something that we're going to talk about. My final point of the day is I have to end with tennis. I don't know where you were in the world yesterday, but it was clearly a defining moment in the sport when a 20-year-old Carlos Alcaraz, after 5 hours of battling with the GOAT, the greatest of all time, Novak Djokovic, who was vying for his 25th major title that would actually have broken the record and really set him apart as the all-time greatest. He would also have been number one in the world and the first man to defend the French Open and Wimbledon and keep his sights on a calendar slam. But a tenacious and fiery Carlos Alcaraz took it from him. He did not get the torch passed to him. And in that moment, I think all of us saw the emergence of a new champion and possibly the emergence of a new rivalry, which could be, as John McEnroe says, good for tennis. How fitting is it that when Roger Federer won his first Wimbledon, Carlos Alcaraz had just been born. When Novak Djokovic started winning his majors, he was just a 7 or 8-year-old kid, dreaming that one day he would be able to play tennis at that level. How fitting is it that he actually, who trained in Spain at Rafael Nadal's academy, could be holding the Wimbledon trophy over his head. All of us sports enthusiasts there hope for a healthy Carlos Alcaraz. And of course, get your seats and tickets for the United States Open, because all of us already are praying for a rematch, a Novak Djokovic, 36-year-old young versus a 20-year-old Carlos Alcaraz. Will this be the motivation Djokovic needs to continue and to stun us with his talent at the age of 36? All of us who know him as a competitor know that we don't think it's the last of Novak. And he's probably out there practicing right now, getting ready for his next major championship against his new rival. That's my final point of the day. Carlos, congratulations. You have arrived as the number one player in the world and someone that I think soon will be in the double digits of majors if you stay healthy. We'll be back tomorrow for another edition of World Edition. Thank you all so much, and be safe wherever you are. Thank you.